when these lice actually, and this is a pubic louse, it's different than the head louse. It's a different species. They don't breed together. But they still cause the same problems. They feed up on you. They reproduce very rapidly. Some folks refer to the pubic lice as crabs as opposed to the head lice. But if you've ever seen head lice, these things will climb up the hair, and they pretty much create these little capsules on the hair. We call them nits. And they have the larval forms of the organisms in them, and they actually are very symmetric about how they do it. They kind of climb up the hair about the same distance and put this on. So in the old days, when you had this problem, they just shaved the hair off and then tried to disinfect whatever bedding you had and to try to get rid of them. Because these things hang on the hair more than the other ones. Huh?
What do they do?
They just live on you.
Well, they eat it.
They'll feed on you a little bit, yeah. The pubic lice, they tend to concentrate themselves in the groin area. It can happen to any social economic group. They get onto the skin, lay the eggs. Eggs hatch and later release baby lice. They also attach their eggs, called nits, to the host pubic hair. Louse lives for about 6 weeks and then dies. Within 24 hours without blood, because they feed on your blood, they will starve to death as well. So what some folks do with lice, say, you've got maybe toys or something like that, if somebody's got head lice and they've been playing or whatever, they can take those things, they can store them away long enough, because there's no blood in there, right? Away from people, and they will starve to death. But females lay a couple eggs daily. All right, just some summary about STDs. This is the end of it. This has nothing to do with the last couple of slides, but just a summary of some of the main points. One of them, what problems can they cause? Well, there's problems with, obviously, baby's birth weight. If you're not healthy because you're infected with an infectious sexually transmitted disease, it's going to affect the baby's size. It may not be able to pass through the barrier, but some can, right? Like cytomegalovirus can. Are STDs always detectable? No. Some of them are asymptomatic, means you don't see any symptoms. But are they still doing damage? Yes, they still do damage. Even if you don't have symptoms, they can still be doing damage. Big problem that they cause, particularly in young females that want to have babies later, is infertility. Why? What does it do? Create the infertility? Very good. Destroys the lining of the uterus and also damages the lining of the fallopian tubes, which also puts you at greater risk for what problem? If you're a young mom, ectopic pregnancy, the egg implanting in the fallopian tube because the fallopian tube is blocked. So those are a couple of main risks that I wanted to summarize before we moved on to non-communicable diseases. That congenital or prenatal infections, we know they can also damage infants. This is one of the reasons why we treat you all with silver nitrate when you're born. We put drops in your eyes. It used to be one of the leading causes of blindness in young babies was STDs as they passed through the birth canal and then became infected with syphilis or gonorrhea or any of these kinds of things. It destroyed these young eyes that were just growing, and they were blind for the rest of their life. So that became a very common practice. We also know some of the babies that are born get STDs like HIV, either passing through the birth canal, or another way that HIV can be passed on to babies is through breast milk. That was another phenomenon. A lot of these other STDs can't be passed on through the breast milk, but that one can. Again, we talked about risky types of behavior. The more sexual partners you have, the higher the risk that you're going to develop an STD. Abstinence, of course, is the only way that you can assure that you're not going to be afflicted with those STDs like syphilis and gonorrhea and those that are almost strictly passed on sexually. Monogamous sexual relationships also decrease any kind of chance of STDs, obviously. In fact, that's one big reason why a lot of relationships end in divorce. You got a married partner who comes into the relationship here and gives you an STD, whether they had it before they met you or whether they picked it up afterwards. A lot of times it doesn't matter. Socially, we know that STDs are, when somebody becomes infected with STDs from somebody that they care about, usually a lot of times spells the end of the relationship. We do know that condoms do and can be effective against STDs, even HIV. Common myth is that as long as the condom is intact, there's no leaks, no holes, no damage to it. And again, it has to be used correctly. If you don't put it on correctly, then it doesn't protect you. If you get semen, for example, you try to put it on the wrong way, it won't go on. So if you get semen or a little fluid on the outside there, and then say, oh shoot, and then flip it over, as long as there's any kind of liquid on the outside that came from it, you've just infected that condom and you have to throw it out. If it's not stored properly, if they use, if it's been in heat and that sort of thing, it's not going to hold together. It'll break apart. If it's used with things like Vaseline or whatever, that will dissolve a condom. And some people do that and wonder why it breaks. Well, that's because that will dissolve the latex condoms, not the polyurethane ones, the latex ones will. But if they're not used properly, it's not going to work. Needles, drug paraphernalia, actually can pass on a lot of different kinds of STDs. If you got it in your blood and you share blood with somebody else, you can pass it on. HIV, that was one of the main causes of spread for HIV at one point. Sex is by far number one way it's passed on, but among drug abusers and things like that, using intravenous drugs, injectable drugs, here, share my needle. Well, if you've got the virus or if you've got the bacteria, that's a great way to pass it on from one person to the next. So that just kind of summarizes what we understood about this. All right, let's talk about some non-communicable diseases here. These are diseases that can't be passed on. And this is just a bullet point of the things that we're going to be talking about in this order. All right? Why these things? Well, first of all, number one, killer. Number two, killer. This contributes to both of these, and this is now